Well, it's a moment steeped in history, diplomacy, and high economic expectations. President Tinubu has now arrived in London for a landmark two-day historic visit, one that has already been described as both historic and strategic. Not since 1989, when Nigeria's then head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, was received by Queen Elizabeth II, has a Nigerian leader been accorded this level of diplomatic honor by the British monarchy. This visit, hosted by King Charles III at Windsor Castle, is the first of its kind in 37 years, and notably the first since Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999. Beyond the pageantry, it comes at a critical time when both nations are looking to reset as well as deepen ties in a post-Brexit world, with trade volumes already exceeding £8 billion and now new partnerships emerging in key sectors. At the heart of this visit are big questions. Can Nigeria convert this symbolic engagement into tangible economic gains? Will we see real investments flow into critical sectors like energy, mining, and infrastructure? And how will sensitive issues like migration, security cooperation, and diaspora relations shape their outcomes? We're hearing from the federal government saying that ongoing reforms under the Renewed Hope agenda are already boosting global confidence, with foreign reserves now surpassing $50 billion. There's also a major £746 million financing deal on the table to modernize Nigeria's port infrastructure, one of the several agreements we're expected to see signed during this visit. So is this a diplomatic reset, an economic opportunity, or both? To help unpack this significance and expectations, as well as likely outcomes of this historic visit, I'm joined now by one of Nigeria's foremost economists and Managing Director of Financial Derivatives, Mr. Bismarck Rewani. Mr. Rewani, thank you for joining us on Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'd like us to begin with something light, but also very important historical note. You probably will be around 37 years old, correct me if I'm wrong, during the 1989 state visit of General Ibrahim Babangida. What do you remember from that period, and what did it represent for Nigeria's economic and diplomatic relationship with Britain at the time?
Well, don't forget, at that time, Nigeria was a leading member of the Commonwealth of Nations. Nigeria just, the historical ties between Nigeria and Britain are there. Nigerian English is the lingua franca of Nigeria. Britain was the colonial master of Nigeria in the past. And our links go all the way. Almost all our leaders, both in the military and civilian, either went to Sandhurst if they're in the military, or they went to Oxford, Cambridge, University of London, University of Manchester, and so on. So our ties come a long way. Secondly, is generations, right? Nigeria was part of the British Army when they fought in Burma. Nigeria was part of the British Army when they fought the First World War, Second World War. And therefore, the links go a long way. And I think it's worth remembering. Now, many years ago, it was part of the Nigerian, what I call the political rhetoric to have good working relationships with Britain. And you know, the Queen was around for 70 years. So all of us were born when the Queen was in power. And therefore, visiting with the Queen was extremely important and symbolic, right, to people. So I think Gawan was the only military officer or head of state who was allowed or encouraged to use this uniform because it was a product of this Royal Academy of Sandhurst. Other officers did not have that opportunity of wearing their uniform with the Queen. Following that, I think what has happened now is a restoration of links. Nigeria has now multi relationships. We have good, strong relations with the European Union. We have with China. We have with India. Our trade has become more diversified. Our reserves used to be in British pounds before, but now it's mainly in the US dollars and gold. So I think both for symbolic reasons, both for historical reasons, both for traditional reasons, this visit is is important.
We have come of age 37 years later and now under a democratic government. In your view, how significant is this moment, not just symbolically, because I'm interested to know whether or not you think symbolism still matter in global economic diplomacy today?
It matters because Nigeria gained independence in 1960, and that's a long time ago. It's over 65 years ago, I think, or 66 years ago. And therefore, it's not just for symbolic reasons. The point is that Nigeria and Britain drifted, so to speak. Don't forget, in 1977, I think, Nigeria nationalized British petroleum assets, then Rhodesia, which is Zimbabwe today. So we were not just economically independent, we were politically independent, and we were non-aligned. And Africa was the centerpiece of our foreign policy. That was what happened at that time. So I'm not saying this for symbolically. It is actually not just coming of age. It is what we call maturing. Nigeria is maturing, right? But maturity can be interpreted in geopolitical terms. It could be interpreted and translated in economic terms. It could also be translated in terms of the respect you earn in the Community of Nations. So I think that is how we have to look at this.
Let us stay with the economy of things, because that's why we've brought you on the show today. Nigeria-UK trade is already above £8 billion, and both countries signed a trade and investment partnership as recently as 2024. What realistically should Nigeria be aiming to get out of this visit in concrete economic terms?
If you look at the slides which I'm sharing with you, you see that Nigeria's international trade has increased in the last 2-3 years. Nigeria's investment flows, if you look at the investment flows that have come from multinational international banks, you will find that the British banks lead the pack in terms of capital. The City of London, there are at least 7 Nigerian banks, that are represented in the City of London. And I can tell you this because I was on the board of one of the banks licensed by the Federal Financial Prudent Authority. It is very difficult. It's an onerous task to have Nigerian banks or any international bank to be licensed in the UK. You go through a very rigorous process and scrutiny. So to have 7 Nigerian banks, and they are as follows: Access Bank, Zenith Bank, GT Bank, First Bank, UBA, FCMB, and Feed Bank. The minimum capital, the rules of engagement, the multiple jurisdiction, and you are examined and scrutinized by Bank of England, by the Financial Prudent Authority and Financial Conduct Authority. So to have 7 Nigerian banks actually represented in the City of London is a big deal. Now, if you talk about trade, you look at the change in dynamics, imports and exports between 2021 and 2025. Britain, the UK, in 2021 was almost the lowest among the leading trading partners. But in 2025, it has moved higher, and we are seeing more of that. We're also seeing and noticing that there's an increase in Nigerian companies with British interest. And I roll out some. You have Shell Petroleum, you have Seplat Energy, you have Guinness, you have Virgin Atlantic in Nigeria, you have British Airways, you have Unilever, you have British American Tobacco, you have PZ Cousins out of Manchester, you have May and Baker, and these are just a few. As far as British interests, their partners here, we've said that. But Nigerian companies that are dual listed on the London and Nigerian exchange include Airtel, include Seplat, and many others. So not only has trade increased, the amount of aid has reduced. Nigeria is not dependent on aid. The trade has increased. Our investment flows have increased, and our cross investment representation is quite solid. So it is it's not a partnership of unequals, it's a partnership of equals. And quite frankly, Nigeria has every reason to be proud of
Interesting.
how we got here over the past 65 years.
We have that slide shown on the screen right now showing British interest in Nigeria. And as you have said, it spans consumer goods, aviation, beverages, pharmaceuticals, largely through ownership, legacy firms, and direct operations. What we're also hearing from the government, Mr. Rwani, is that President Tinubu will be pitching his administration's macroeconomic reforms to British investors. One of the headline expectations is the £746 million financing deal to upgrade Apapa and Tinkan ports. How transformative could this be for Nigeria's trade competitiveness and overall economic efficiency?
Well, you see, it is the government's business responsibility to make the country attractive for investors. The ports are very, very important because trade goes through there, both exports and imports. Also, the fact that the currency is stable and that investors are almost guaranteed that they will have their return, a decent return, and can repatriate their dividends. And Nigerian investors in the UK are also having that as well. There are Nigerian tax treaties between Nigeria and Britain. I think that is something that needs to be looked at closely. And basically, it's moving in the right direction. But what I want to emphasize here is that key areas that the Nigerian administration, policymakers have to emphasize is that there's a package to deal with security problems. Two, there's something that's being done. There's a game plan for ensuring that power supply is virtually going to improve. Thirdly, that investors who come in will be protected by a robust and reliable judicial system. So in case of disputes, you don't have to go for arbitration and go for other jurisdictions to resolve disputes. You will find that Nigeria will and will definitely be attractive if it can address the issues of security,
Indeed.
power, and judicial maturity.
You have an entire slide that enumerates Nigeria's tradable commodities from crude oil all the way down to salt, sulfur, stone, cement, and what have you. But you know, there's also the issue of global confidence. Our government is pointing to rising external reserves, now over $50 billion, as evidence of stability. Do investors see Nigeria today as a safer and more predictable destination?
No, there's no question about the fact that from a monetary policy perspective, Nigeria has actually come from where it was almost a basket case to what is improved monetary stability. Part of the monetary stability is the level of reserves that you have, and also the fact that you have external debt and that investors are buying your Eurobonds and all that. That is good. The long-term trajectory of your growth, the long-term trajectory of your income per head, and your competitiveness in terms of the social indicators also matter. And that is why we're saying that people don't go on a beauty. These visits are not a beauty parade where you go and say how beautiful you are. It's what you do that people see. It's not what you say that people hear. So you can say as much as you want, but what they're looking at, what are you doing? If you say you have you passed the PIA, you have reformed the NNPC as an institution, you have allowed the listing, or you have encouraged the Dangote refinery to refine domestically and meet all the demands of the Nigerians. Those are tangibles that visible tangibles that people can see. So over and above that, the economy sells itself, right? We don't have to sing a swan song about it. That's what I'm trying to say. Everybody in Nigeria and all the international investors are interested in investing, and the level of investment has increased because there's improved confidence, and we have to emphasize that and continue to sell our projects, our market as an attractive an
You know,
attractive market nation for investment.
sensitive issues are also on the table during this visit. Migration rules affecting Nigerian students and professionals, and even human rights concerns. Could these complicate negotiations or affect investor sentiment?
I don't think so. There are always going to be issues about immigration and all of that, but that's not the issue. Nigeria remains a non-aligned nation. Nigeria remains a nation that has Africa as the centerpiece of its foreign policy. But what is happening is that investors want to hear policy changes. They want institutional reform that can deliver things, and they want reliability of the institutions, including the central bank, the justice system, and the security system, the infrastructure that allows people sleep with two eyes closed rather than sleep with one eye open.
Hmm. Let's talk about the diaspora for a minute. Over 270,000 Nigerians in the UK. Well, they say if you go to London today, you probably see more black people there than white folks, especially with Mr. President's two-day visit. But how critical are they, I mean Nigerians in diaspora, in strengthening economic ties, especially in terms of remittances, investment flows, and soft power?
Okay, you hit a very important point. Firstly, before I go there, we had what we call the bilateral air service agreement between Nigeria and Britain. We had airlines, we have British Airways and Virgin Atlantic coming into Nigeria, and we have airplanes going into both Gatwick and Heathrow. We also have the number of passengers that go in both directions have also increased significantly. We also have, you said 270,000 Nigerians in Britain. I think there are much more than that. I would put it roughly at about 1 million or 1.2 million Nigerians, because there are a lot of Nigerians. You said black people. Not every Nigerian. There are some Nigerians who are not necessarily Negroid. There are people who are white Nigerians who were born in Nigeria, have Nigerian citizenship. The Asians who have Nigerian citizenship. But importantly is that I would say that at least almost 30 to 40% of our diaspora remittances, which comes to almost $21 billion a year, comes out of the UK. Even those who are in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and others, their secondary home of residence is in Britain. In other words, they go to Britain first, and before they go and reside in Dubai so when they remit their money, first and foremost, one to Britain, and then from Britain they remit it back here. So it is very, very important to understand that we look at Nigeria diaspora as a block. They're in the United States, they're in Britain, they're in the Gulf region, they're also in Canada. And many of them now in the West Indies. So the diaspora flows from the creative industry are equal or if not more than what we get from oil. So it's very, very important that our interests are protected in Britain and many of those countries, including Europe, United States, and Canada. But it's also important that we also reciprocate as a reliable, non-aligned nation and partners in this.
If you were advising President Tinubu directly on this trip, what one deal or commitment would you insist mustn't return without, and why?
First and foremost, I would British investors that their investments are protected, that their returns will be decent and will outpace the level of inflation both in Britain and in Nigeria, anywhere, and that the judicial system will ensure that if there are any disputes, the remedies are there and those institutional reforms have been entrenched in Nigeria. I will also convince or try to pitch to the international community that we have a program for power reform, and I will guarantee power, both solar and both renewable energies and fossil fuel energies. If that is guaranteed, and that we have a game plan for taking care of security, and finally, that we are going to guarantee safety to both Nigerians and international citizens. I want to make one point. London is not just the capital of Britain. London is an international financial center. So as the president and his team pitch Nigeria to the you are not pitching Nigeria to British investors. You are pitching Nigeria to the international community. I think I heard the central bank governor say that over 35% or something about approximately 35% of the recapitalization proceeds of the banks came from international investors, as against 65% of thereabout of Nigerian investors. The banking capitalization has been is successful, and now we are going to the next level where we have the linkages between what Nigeria can offer and the sectors, and pull everybody along. So this is a tide that will lift all boats, rather than a tide that lifts only a few
we,
people.
we, we possibly may have lost count of the number of foreign trips like this that Mr. President has embarked on since he became president in 2023. And for the average Nigerian, the bottom line is, what's in it for me? When he returns to Nigeria at the end of this particular visit, walk us through what specific outcomes Nigerians can look out for as a judge, whether this trip was truly successful or just ceremonial.
I think the goals are clear. I'm not a fan for many trips, but I'm a fan for trips that have value add characteristics. So one is that you are trying to restore the dignity and respect of a country that has lost a lot of its values over the years. Two is to say that we are connected to the rest of the world. We are not a Robinson Crusoe economy. Three is that we've seen a change in the composition of our GDP. We now have services growing faster than the real sector, than petroleum sector. We are seeing that Nigeria is able to harness resources both for its African initiatives and also for its international initiatives. We have seen that Nigeria is not an appendage to a former master colony relationship. It is now independent and has come of age. Don't forget that even the United States was 300 years ago a colony of the United Kingdom. Today, you can see that there's almost what I can say there's parity and equality of respect in spite of the special relationship. So Nigeria is telling the world, or should be telling the world, that we have come of age. We are not a parasite economy. We have our contribution. Our contribution to global GDP is expected to grow much faster. And that in another 10 years or so, Nigeria will be one of the top 5 or 6 most populous countries in the world. So I think that's the message, and that this is a big market. We're open for business.
Indeed.
And while investors are coming into Nigeria, we have people investing. We have Dangote, we have Goa, and others investing in other markets, mainly in Africa, but even some in Europe and in Asia. So when that way, you will be respected, with mutual respect. I want to bring up a point. You see, India and Pakistan got independence the same day. Today, Pakistan is famous for the wrong reasons, while India is famous for. India is now the 5th largest economy, I think the 4th largest economy in the world, and that is bigger than the UK, which was the mother country way back then. That is the aspiration. That's the goal, and you can see that the largest refinery in the world is in India, and now with the Dangote expansion, we think that the refinery in Lagos is going to be the largest in the world. So you can see some similarity in the aspirations, similarity in the ambitions, and similarity in the deliverables of both India, which is the largest democracy in the world, and Nigeria, which is aspiring to become a respected nation.
Absolutely. All eyes on this historic visit hosted by King Charles III. I believe the real test in the coming days will be beyond the ceremonies, the real impact to be measured in investment secured, partnership strengthened, and like you said, tangible gains for Nigerians. Mr. Bismarck Ruwani is Managing Director of Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you so much for your insight on the program this
Thank you for having me.
And that's our show, everyone. You can watch it again at midnight and 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.